Story 1: The Creepy Forest Encounter. Forests are supposed to be peaceful, aren't they? The whisper of leaves, the soft crunch of twigs underfoot, and the feeling of being surrounded by nature's quiet beauty. It's easy to forget how isolated they can make you. But isolation is a double-edged sword. 1 minute, it's calming; the next, it's terrifying. I learned that lesson the hard way during a walk that could have cost me far more than I ever imagined. It was a warm afternoon, and my best friend Haley and I decided to explore the forest near our small town. We'd walked that trail dozens of times, finding comfort in the familiar path that wound its way through the dense trees. But on this particular day, something felt off. About halfway into our walk, I got the distinct feeling we were being watched. I glanced over my shoulder and saw him, a tall man standing just far enough behind us to seem casual, but close enough to make my heart pound. Would you trust your instincts in a moment like that? Or would you brush off the fear until it was too late? It started as an ordinary day. Haley and I had spent the morning lounging in my backyard, laughing and talking about everything from school drama to plans for the summer. By the time noon rolled around, we were restless. "Let's go to the trail," Haley suggested, her eyes lighting up. I could use some fresh air. The forest trail was one of our favorite spots. It wasn't far from my house, and its winding paths and hidden clearings felt like our little secret. We packed some water, leashed up my dog Luna, and set out. The trail entrance was unassuming, a narrow dirt path cutting through the thick underbrush. But once inside, the forest opened up into a maze of trees, their towering trunks creating a canopy of green. Luna bounded ahead, her tail wagging as she darted between the bushes. For the first 20 minutes, everything was perfect. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, birds chirped in the distance, and the earthy scent of the forest filled the air. Haley and I talked and laughed, our voices echoing softly through the trees. But then, I felt it, a prickling at the back of my neck, like someone's eyes were on me. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I told myself it was just the natural eeriness of the forest, the way shadows seemed to move even when nothing was there. But as we rounded a bend in the trail, I glanced back and saw him. He was about 50 feet behind us, walking at a slow, deliberate pace. His clothes were nondescript, dark jeans and a faded jacket, and his face was partially hidden beneath a baseball cap. "Haley," I whispered, nudging her. "Don't look now. But there's a guy behind us." Haley frowned. "Maybe he's just out for a walk." "Maybe," I said, my voice shaky. "But why isn't he passing us? There's plenty of room." We decided to pick up the pace, hoping to put some distance between us and the stranger. Luna seemed to sense my unease, her ears twitching as she stayed closer to my side. But no matter how fast we walked, the man stayed behind us, always keeping the same distance. The forest, which had felt so welcoming just moments ago, now felt suffocating. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made me jump. I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder, and every time I did, the man was there, matching our pace. "We should turn back," I whispered to Haley. "And walk right past him," she shot back, her voice laced with fear. She was right. Turning back wasn't an option. We had to keep moving forward. The trail began to narrow, the trees pressing closer together as the sunlight grew dimmer. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing with questions. Who was this man? Why was he following us? And what would he do if he caught up? Haley pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she tried to call her mom. No signal. Of course, she muttered, shoving the phone back into her pocket. We rounded another bend and spotted a clearing up ahead. Relief flooded through me. It was the end of the trail, where a dirt road led to the edge of a gated community. If we could make it there, we'd be safe. But as we neared the clearing, I heard it, the sound of footsteps quickening behind us. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Haley's arm. We bolted down the trail, Luna barking wildly as she sprinted alongside us. The footsteps behind us grew louder, the man's heavy breaths mixing with the crunch of leaves underfoot. The clearing seemed impossibly far away, the trees blurring as we ran. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like they were moving through molasses. But I didn't dare slow down. Finally, we burst into the open, the dirt road stretching out before us. The gated community wall loomed just ahead, its smooth concrete surface offering the promise of safety. "Climb it," I gasped, pushing Haley toward the wall. She hesitated for a split second before scrambling up, using the rough patches of brick for leverage. I boosted her as best I could, my hands slipping on the cold stone. Behind me, the man emerged from the trees, his face now fully visible. His expression was twisted into something between anger and determination. And in his hand, I saw a glint of metal. Adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed Luna's leash and hoisted myself up the wall. Haley reached down, pulling me up just as the man lunged forward, his outstretched hand grazing the heel of my shoe. We tumbled over the wall, landing in a heap on the other side. My knees scraped against the pavement, but I barely noticed the pain. A man walking his dog nearby rushed over, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "Are you girls okay?" he asked, helping us to our feet. "There's a man," I panted, pointing toward the wall. "He was chasing us." The dog walker didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and called the police, keeping an eye on the wall as we huddled together. The man didn't try to climb after us. Instead, he stood on the other side, staring at us with a look that sent chills down my spine. Then, without a word, he turned and disappeared back into the forest. The police arrived quickly, taking our statements and searching the area. But they never found the man. 4 weeks. I couldn't shake the image of his face or the sound of his footsteps chasing us through the trees. The forest, once my favorite place, now felt tainted, its beauty overshadowed by the memory of that day. I stopped walking the trail, even during the day. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow in the corner of my eye made my heart race. Haley and I talked about the encounter often, replaying every detail and asking the same questions. Who was he? Why was he following us? What would have happened if we hadn't escaped? We never got answers. But one thing was clear, that day changed us. It made us more cautious, more aware of the dangers lurking in the places we once felt safe. Looking back, I wonder if we could have done anything differently. Should we have confronted him? Tried to lose him earlier? Or was running our only option? Sometimes, I think about the man and what might have driven him to follow us. Was he dangerous? Or was he just looking to scare us? Either way, his actions left a scar that time hasn't fully healed. What would you have done in our place? Could you have stayed calm? Or would fear have taken over? Story 2, Motel Terror. Motels are supposed to be a temporary refuge, A place where you can catch a few hours of sleep before hitting the road again. That's what I told myself when I pulled into the small, dimly lit establishment on the outskirts of a forgotten desert town. The parking lot was nearly empty, the neon vacancy sign buzzing faintly in the otherwise oppressive silence. I didn't think twice about the isolated location or the peeling paint on the walls. After all, I was exhausted, and it was the only option for miles. What I didn't realize was that this would be the night I truly understood the meaning of fear. At 3 a.m., I woke to a faint scraping sound at my door. Groggy and disoriented, I assumed it was just the wind. But then I heard the metallic click of the door handle being tested. Heart pounding. I froze in my bed, straining to hear through the darkness. The handle jiggled again, harder this time. Someone was trying to get in. What would you do if you woke up to find yourself trapped, alone, and someone was just outside, trying to break in? The day had started early, with the rising sun stretching across the endless highway. I'd been on a solo road trip for a week, and the novelty of the open road was beginning to wear off. I was somewhere in the middle of the desert, miles from anything that resembled civilization. The landscape stretched out in every direction, a monotony of sand, rocks, and dry shrubs. By the time dusk began to settle, I was beyond tired. The prospect of driving another hour to the next major city felt impossible. That's when I spotted the motel. It sat alone, a single-story building with a row of rooms facing the parking lot. The sign read Sunset Haven, though it looked more like a place where travelers went to disappear. Still, I was too exhausted to care. I pulled into the lot, parked near the end, and checked in at the front desk. The clerk barely looked up as he slid the key across the counter. "Room 12, he mumbled. "Checkout's at 10. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a rundown motel: stained carpet, outdated furniture, and a lingering smell of mildew. But it had a bed, and that was all I needed. I double-checked the locks before settling in, bolting the door and sliding the chain into place. The air conditioner hummed loudly, masking the eerie silence outside. Despite my exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. I tossed and turned, the unfamiliar surroundings making it hard to relax. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind outside made my ears perk up. Eventually, I drifted off, lulled by the monotonous drone of the AC. But then, at some point in the night, I woke with a start. At first, I wasn't sure what had pulled me from my sleep. The room was pitch black, the only light coming from the faint glow of the neon sign outside. I lay there, listening intently. And then I heard it, a soft, scraping sound. The sound was faint but unmistakable, like metal against metal. It was coming from the door. I sat up slowly, my heart beginning to race. The scraping continued, followed by a soft click, as if someone was testing the lock. Maybe it's just the wind, I thought, though I didn't believe it. The handle jiggled once, then twice, harder each time. Someone was out there. Panic surged through me as I scanned the room for something, anything, I could use to defend myself. My suitcase sat in the corner, but it might as well have been miles away. The door rattled again, and I realized with a sinking feeling that the lock wasn't holding as firmly as it should. I slipped out of bed as quietly as possible, my bare feet pressing against the cold floor, keeping my breathing shallow. I moved toward the door, careful not to make a sound. From the small gap beneath the door, I saw shadows shifting. Whoever was out there wasn't giving up. I leaned closer, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. That's when I noticed something horrifying. The lock had been tampered with. The metal around the deadbolt was scratched and bent, as if someone had used a tool to pry it open. My mind raced. How had I not noticed this when I checked in? Had someone done this before I arrived? Or had they been watching me, waiting for the right moment? The handle jiggled again, more violently this time, and I knew I didn't have much time. I backed away from the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. I needed to get out. But the idea of stepping outside was just as terrifying as staying inside. My car keys sat on the nightstand, and I grabbed them with shaking hands. The car was parked right outside. If I could make it there, I'd be safe. I moved to the window, carefully pulling the curtain back just enough to see. The parking lot was deserted, save for my car and a few others scattered across the lot. But the shadows near the door didn't move, and I couldn't see the face of the person trying to get in. The door rattled again, harder this time. The chain groaned against the force, and I knew it wouldn't hold for long. With no time to waste, I made my decision. I slipped on my shoes, clutching my keys tightly, and moved toward the door. I waited for the next loud rattle before sliding the chain free and yanking the door open. The sudden motion startled the intruder, a tall man with wild eyes and a makeshift tool in his hand. For a split second, we locked eyes. His expression shifted from shock to anger, and I knew he wasn't going to let me go without a fight. I didn't wait for him to recover. I shoved past him, nearly tripping as I sprinted toward my car. Behind me, I heard him curse, his footsteps pounding against the pavement. My hands fumbled with the keys as I reached the driver's side door. My heart sank as I heard his footsteps getting closer. But somehow, I managed to unlock the door and dive inside. I slammed the door shut, locking it just as he reached the car. The man banged on the window, his face twisted in rage. His fist slammed against the glass, but it held firm. I turned the key, the engine roaring to life, throwing the car into reverse. I backed out of the parking space, narrowly avoiding the man as he lunged for the door handle. He stumbled, and I hit the gas, speeding out of the lot and onto the empty highway. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the wheel. But I didn't slow down. In the rearview mirror, the motel faded into the distance, its neon sign flickering like a ghostly reminder of how close I'd come to danger. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station an hour away. There, under the harsh fluorescent lights, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The attendant gave me a concerned look as I stood by the counter, still trembling. I considered calling the police but hesitated. What could I tell them? That a man tried to break into my motel room? That the lock had already been tampered with when I checked in? I left the gas station without making the call, too shaken to relive the experience. 4 weeks after, I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The image of the man's face, the sound of the door handle jiggling, the way the lock had already been damaged, it all haunted me. Motels are supposed to be a safe place, a temporary home for weary travelers. But that night taught me how vulnerable we can be in unfamiliar places. I still wonder what the man's intentions were. Was he looking to rob me? Hurt me? Or worse? I'll never know. And maybe that's for the best. What would you have done in my place? Could you have stayed calm? Or would panic have taken over? Story 3, The Dangerous Trail. Trails have always felt like home to me. There's something about the way the trees cocoon you. Their leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. The dirt path crunching softly beneath your feet. They hold a kind of magic, a promise of peace and solitude. At least, that's what I thought before that day. Haley and I had been planning this hike for weeks. It wasn't anything serious. Just a leisurely stroll through the forest trail near my house. It was our spot. The one place we could escape the noise of school, family, and everything else that made teenage life chaotic. That afternoon, the sky was a brilliant blue, and the sun filtered gently through the canopy above, creating dappled patterns on the path. Birds chirped cheerily in the distance, their songs blending harmoniously with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Luna, my golden retriever, bounded ahead of us, her nose twitching at every scent. We laughed and chatted as we walked, our conversation ranging from the latest school gossip to our plans for the summer. Everything about the day felt perfect. But then, somewhere along the trail, the forest grew quiet. It wasn't an immediate change. At first, I barely noticed. But as we continued walking, the absence of sound became impossible to ignore. The birds had stopped singing, and even the rustling leaves seemed to have stilled. Is it just me? Or is it a little too quiet? Haley asked, her voice breaking the unnatural hush. I nodded, a prickling sensation creeping up the back of my neck. Yeah. It's weird. Maybe there's a storm coming. But there were no dark clouds. No wind picking up to signal a change in the weather. Just the eerie stillness that felt heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. That's when we saw him. He was far down the trail, little more than a silhouette against the dappled light. A man, dressed in dark jeans and a hoodie, his hands shoved into his pockets. He walked slowly, his head slightly bowed as if lost in thought. At first glance, he didn't seem threatening. But there was something about the way he moved, too steady, too deliberate, that set my nerves on edge. Probably just another hiker, Haley said, though her voice lacked conviction. Yeah. Probably. I agreed, though my stomach churned with unease. We kept walking, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. But every time I glanced back, he was there, always the same distance behind us. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he just happened to be heading the same way. It was, after all, a popular trail. But as we rounded a bend and took a side path that looped back toward the entrance, he followed. Okay. That's not normal, Haley muttered, her voice low. No, it's not. I agreed, my pulse quickening. We decided to pick up the pace, turning onto a narrower path that cut through a denser part of the woods. The trees here were closer together, their thick trunks casting long shadows over the trail. Luna trotted alongside us, her ears flicking nervously. She was usually fearless, but now she stayed close, her tail tucked low. The man didn't speed up, but he didn't fall behind either. He maintained the same measured pace, his presence a constant weight pressing on my chest. Do you think we should say something? Haley whispered. And what if he's dangerous? I shot back. She didn't respond. The trail twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the woods. Every time we thought we'd lost him, he appeared again, his dark figure emerging from the trees like a specter. Haley and I exchanged a glance. The silent understanding passing between us, we needed to run. "Ready?" I asked. My voice barely audible. She nodded. "Now." We took off. Our feet pounding against the dirt path. Luna barked sharply, her leash tugging at my hand as she sprinted alongside us. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth. But all I could focus on was the sound of footsteps behind us, heavy, relentless, gaining ground. My lungs burned as we pushed ourselves harder. The trail blurring in front of me. Branches snagged at my clothes. And the uneven ground threatened to trip me with every step. "Where does this go?" Haley shouted, her voice strained with panic. "There's a gate ahead." I managed between gasps. The gate. It was our only hope. The clearing came into view. The gate standing at its far edge like a beacon of salvation. It was old and rusted, its bars streaked with patches of orange from years of weathering. Beyond it lay a residential neighborhood, a safe haven if we could just reach it. "Go," I urged Haley, shoving her toward the gate as we burst into the clearing. She reached it first, throwing her weight against the heavy metal. The gate groaned as it swung open, just wide enough for her to slip through. I followed, dragging Luna behind me. But as I turned to close the gate, the man appeared at the edge of the clearing, his face finally visible. It was twisted with frustration, or was it something darker? His eyes locked on mine. And for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then he sprinted toward us. I slammed the gate shut just as he reached it, the metal rattling violently as he grabbed the bars and shook them with a feral intensity. "Get back!" Haley shouted, her voice trembling. Luna barked furiously, her teeth bared as she lunged at the gate. The man didn't flinch, his eyes burning with an unspoken threat. But then, as suddenly as he had appeared, he stopped. His grip loosened, and he stepped back, his expression unreadable. Without a word, he turned and disappeared into the woods. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was Luna's panting, her chest heaving as she pressed against my leg. "Are you okay?" Haley asked, her voice shaking. I nodded, though my entire body trembled. "Yeah. You?" "Barely," she admitted. We sat on the curb, trying to catch our breath. A jogger passing by stopped. Concern etched across his face. "Everything all right?" "There was a man," I stammered. "He was following us. He chased us." The jogger wasted no time calling the police, staying with us until they arrived. Officers searched the area and took our statements. But the man was gone, leaving no trace behind. 4 weeks. I couldn't shake the memory of his face. It haunted me in my dreams. His burning eyes and the way he stood so silently at the gate. Haley and I vowed never to go back to that trail, no matter how much we missed it. Even Luna seemed affected, barking at shadows and staying close whenever we ventured outdoors. I still wonder what he wanted. Was he just trying to scare us? Or did he have darker intentions? The not knowing is what keeps me awake at night, replaying the chase over and over in my mind. Trails, once my sanctuary, now feel like traps, places where danger can lurk behind every tree, waiting for the right moment to strike. What would you have done in our place? Would you have run? Or would you have confronted him? As the stories draw to a close, one question lingers in the air: what truly lies in the dark corners of the world around us? Whether it's the unsettling rustle of leaves in an empty forest, the ominous knock at a motel door, or the chilling realization that danger could be lurking just behind you, these tales remind us that the unknown is always closer than we think. For now, these mysteries remain unresolved. But the thrill of the unknown doesn't end here. What would you do if you found yourself in these terrifying scenarios? Would you face the danger? Or would you run? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you'd handle the chilling encounters we've shared tonight. And this is just the beginning. At Wolf Tells, we're diving deeper into the shadows with every story. If you're ready for more spine-tingling mysteries and hair-raising tales, be sure to hit the like button and share this video with fellow thrill seekers. Most importantly, subscribe to Wolf Tells and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter of our journey into the unknown. Trust us, you don't want to be left in the dark. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep watching, because the next story might just keep you up at night. This is Wolf Tells, signing off. See you in the shadows.